Welcome to the channel, you guys. In this video, we're going to go over an official update directly from George R.R. Martin. It sounds like Winds of Winter and A Song of Ice and Fire as a whole will have a much different outcome than what we saw on Game of Thrones. Now, if George actually finishes these books, I believe this should be considered very good news. Now, before I get into this update, make sure if you find this video entertaining or informative to go ahead and leave it a like, and be sure to subscribe so that you can join us in future videos discussing all things A Song of Ice and Fire, including shows and spinoffs. Thank you for your support. Now let's get to the new update from George. So I'm going to try and cherry pick this for you to cover what I think is the most significant parts of the update, but I'll put a link to the update itself down in the description box so that you can read it in its entirety if you like. These are just the areas that I find the most informative. I will say this, I have been at work in my winter garden. Things are growing and changing, as does happen with us gardeners. Things twist, things change, new ideas come to me. Thank you, Muse. Old ideas prove unworkable. I write, I rewrite, I restructure. I rip everything apart and rewrite it again. I go through doors that lead nowhere and doors that open on marvels. Sounds mad, I know, but it's how I write. Always has been, always will be, for good or ill. What I have noticed more and more of late, however, is my gardening is taking me further and further away from the television series. Yes, some of the things you saw on HBO and Game of Thrones you will also see in the Winds of Winter, though maybe not in quite the same ways. But much of the rest will be quite different. Now I think what George is saying here should be obvious if you're familiar with the books. There's just too much content that does involve characters that were not present in the show. So I don't think that's all too revealing, but George dives a bit deeper here. And really, when you think about it, this was inevitable. The novels are much bigger and much more complex than the series. Certain things that happened on HBO will not happen in the books, and vice versa. I have viewpoint characters in the books never seen on the show. Victarion Greyjoy, Arianne Martell, Ariel Hota, John Cunnington, Aaron Damphir. They will all have chapters, and the things they do and say will impact the story and the major characters who were on the show. I have legions of secondary characters, not POVs, but nonetheless important to the plot, who also figure in the story. Lady Stoneheart, Young Griff, the Tattered Prince, Penny, Brown Ben Plum, the Shapate, Marwyn the Mage, Darkstar, Jane Westerling. Some characters you saw in the show are quite different than the versions in the novels. Yara Greyjoy is not Asha Greyjoy, and HBO's Euron Greyjoy is way different from mine. Quaithe still has a part to play, so does Rickon Stark, and poor Jane Poole, and well, the list is long. And all this is part of why Winds is taking so long. This is hard, guys. Of course it's hard, and part of that is due to the gardening approach George takes, but A Song of Ice and Fire would be worse without it in my opinion because it wouldn't be his story. But I felt this for a while, that certain moments that happen in the show may happen in the books, but the weight of these things may be different and more or less impactful depending on how they're presented. Some characters were left out entirely, and others were so dramatically changed that they're almost unrecognizable. And I'm looking at you, Euron Greyjoy. Not to mention how impactful some of the characters that were left out of the show were attached to seemingly primary plot points such as Young Griff, Victarion, almost all of Dorne, and Lady Stoneheart. Lady Stoneheart having significant ties to Brienne, and I think ultimately Jaime as well, and that will have a dramatic turn of events compared to the show. At least I think. How could it not? Then, with Jane Poole assuming the role of fake Arya, where does that leave Sansa in the Vale? She might very well end up as Queen in the North, but she'll definitely take a different route getting there. Now, finishing up George's update, I think he shares kind of what I just said, and what I think most book readers believe already. One thing I can say, in general enough terms that I will not be spoiling anything, not all of the characters who survived until the end of Game of Thrones will survive until the end of A Song of Ice and Fire, and not all of the characters who died on Game of Thrones will die in A Song of Ice and Fire. Some will, sure, of course, maybe most, but definitely not all. Of course, I could change my mind again next week with the next chapter I write. That's gardening. And the ending? You will need to wait until I get there. Some things will be the same. A lot will not. And whether you read the books or not, I think a lot of people began reading after the end of Game of Thrones, and a big part of that may be the dissatisfaction in the show's conclusion, and fans wanted something different. Book readers definitely wanted something different. So to hear that a lot of the ending will not be the same, I personally could not be happier to hear that. No doubt, once I am done, there will be huge debate about which version of the story is better. Some people will like my book, others will prefer the television show. Now, George, I have to say, I gotta stop you there. I don't think anybody's going to prefer the television show's alternative ending. Maybe a few. Maybe just a few. And that's fine. You pay your money and you make your choice. I do fear that a certain proportion of fans are so angry about how long Winds has taken me that they are prepared to hate the book unread. That saddens me, but there is nothing I can do about it but write the best book that I can and hope that when it comes out, most fans will read it with clean hands and an open mind. That's all I can tell you right now. I need to get back to the garden. Tyrion is waiting for me.